I, 39 male, met my wife, 37 female, while we were both in graduate school. I had a work study as a teacher's aide, and she was in one of the classes that I was helping with. Right away, I could sense there was a connection between us. She would consistently stay late after class to ask questions, and I was getting a strong vibe from her, so I offered private tutoring. From there, the rest was history. We officially started dating after that semester, so there wouldn't be any conflict of interest, and we got married 2 years after we graduated. We spent the past 15 years focusing on our careers and our family. We have beautiful daughters together, and we actually just bought our first house. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with throat cancer, and I had to go through some treatments to help it. It was a scary time for our family. I was very focused on the cancer, and admittedly not much else. I realized that was a problem, but I had practically been handed a death notice and I was anxious about it. I underwent surgery and chemo to make sure it was completely gone. The good news is I'm all clear, and have a positive prognosis moving forward. The bad news is I feel like I have to start my life over from scratch, because my wife cheated on me with our neighbor. The total time that I was in chemo was about 6 months. During that time I lost a lot of weight, I was sick all the time, and I ended up having to shave my hair off entirely because it was falling out. I know it sounds awful to say because going through something like this is so challenging, but I couldn't stand looking at myself in the mirror. Before my cancer, I spent a lot of time at the gym, I ate healthy, and I took good care of myself. I never thought I was the most attractive guy in the world, but I was happy and confident with myself. Seeing myself after the chemo was a big shock, and it's still something that I'm working to come back from. About a month ago, I really started to notice there was something going on with my wife. After getting the positive prognosis, all I wanted to do was spend time with my family and celebrate my life. However, my wife couldn't seem to make time for that. She always had some excuse to stay behind when I wanted to go to the movies or the park with the kids. I didn't let it get to me because I had this newfound sense of freedom in my life. I just wanted to spend time with my kids while I was on Earth. I was really cherishing life at that point. One evening over dinner, I suggested that all of us go to an amusement park when it opened up the following week. The kids were obviously excited about the news, but my wife just rolled her eyes and said that she wasn't interested in going. I questioned it because I wanted to spend time with my family. She told me that she had never been a fan of amusement parks, and she would rather just take the time alone at home to relax and read a book. I didn't want to start an argument, but I was a little annoyed with her. I had spent months thinking I was going to die, and when I was finally okay, she didn't want anything to do with me. I ended up going to the park with my kids, and we had a wonderful time. However, toward the end of the day, my youngest daughter fell and hurt her ankle. It was swelling up right away, and I thought that it might have been broken, so I took her to the emergency room. I called my wife several times, and she didn't answer once. It didn't end up being anything serious, but they gave her a brace to keep on it for a couple of weeks, and we went home. When I got back, my wife was just hopping out of the shower. Right away, I asked her why she wasn't answering the phone when I was calling her. She told me that she had fallen asleep reading. Honestly, I didn't believe that for 1 second. Had she truly just taken a nap, she would have heard the phone ringing when I called her 5 times. With how everything else had been, I couldn't help but wonder if there was something more to her not answering. Later that night, when the kids were asleep, I outright asked her about it. I asked her if there was anything wrong in our relationship, so we could try to fix it. She told me that I was imagining things, and that she just wanted some time to herself. She ended the conversation after that and went to sleep. All I was thinking about was how distant she had been lately. Once I heard her snoring beside me, I reached over and grabbed her phone. I needed to see if I really was just imagining things. I looked through her pictures in her apps, and I didn't find anything. But when I went through her messages, I found some concerning information. I saw our next-door neighbor at the top of her message list, which struck me as odd, so I clicked on it, and it told me everything I needed to know. He had messaged her a couple of months before about how he saw her in our hot tub. It was honestly kind of creepy how he worded it, but my wife was apparently flattered. He said that he felt like she was putting on a show for him, and he was interested in her. Their messages progressed from there, and they made a plan to get together to see if their feelings could go anywhere. It was clear from the messages that followed that they were in a sexual relationship with each other. What was even more disturbing about it was that he was married, and he had 3 children of his own. Both of them were just throwing away their marriages. I screen recorded the messages and sent myself the recording so I would have it for my own evidence. Then I rolled over and tried to figure out what I was going to do. We lived in a little cul-de-sac, and everybody was pretty close. It wasn't unusual for one of us to throw a party or invite everyone over for dinner. So I went to all of my neighbors and invited them over for dinner to celebrate my recent cancer-free diagnosis. They were all ecstatic to go and happy with my good news. The day of the dinner came and my wife and I were busy preparing everything for our guests. Everyone came and we mingled, drank some wine, and had a good time before dinner was served. During dinner, as the conversation lulled, the neighbor that my wife was sleeping with told me that I was lucky to get to so much more time with my family. He then complimented my wife on the delicious food and made a joke about how I was a lucky man. I took that as the prime opportunity to call him out and say that he would know. He pretended to be confused, but I could see in his eyes that he was worried about where I was going. I told him that I knew he was sleeping with my wife. My wife dropped her fork on the plate and nearly spit up her wine. She told me that I was out of line for even suggesting that. Then I pulled out my phone and showed her the evidence that I had. Everyone else around the table was silent, but I could see that they were very interested in what I was saying. I had no doubt in my mind they would go home and talk more about it. I went into my office to grab the divorce papers I had prepared. I brought them back into the dining room and gave them to my wife. All the while, my neighbor's wife was asking him if it was true, and he was fervently denying it. I sent her the evidence hoping that it would convince her that he was lying. Not long after that, everybody excused themselves from dinner because it was extremely awkward. My wife was trying to beg me not to do anything drastic. She didn't want me to leave, but there wasn't a chance in hell that I was going to stay. I was curious though, so I asked her why she did it. She told me that she wasn't attracted to me anymore after the chemo. If there had been any chance that I was going to give our relationship another try, it was done after that. I told my wife that I wanted her to get a hotel for the night because I needed to be away from her, and she agreed to do that. During the night, I could hear my neighbors arguing and his wife was throwing his things out of the house. I ended up divorcing my wife and keeping our house. I'm still trying to decide what I want to do with it. I don't know if I want to sell it and move somewhere else or if I want to try and keep some semblance of normalcy for my kids. My neighbors also got divorced. Anytime I ran into my neighbor on the street, he looked like he wanted to kill me, but his wife was thankful that I told her because she didn't want to be with a cheater either. OP. I'm so sorry you had to go through all of that. It's already such a lowly thing to cheat on your partner, but to do it because they were sick and had to undergo chemotherapy is truly disgusting. You were at an extremely vulnerable point in your life, and your partner should have been there for you to make sure you were doing okay. Your wife was extremely selfish to even consider having an affair while you were sick. You're truly better off without a person like that in your life. I can't know exactly what the message from your neighbor said, but messaging a married woman telling her that she looked good in a hot tub is extremely creepy. It's kind of even more shameful that your wife fell for that. Either she had been thinking about him for some time, or she was just desperate to cheat on you. Either way, I'm glad you aren't going to have to put up with somebody like her anymore. I truly wish you the best and congratulations on your positive prognosis. Now let's get into our second story for today. I, 37 male, met my wife, 31 female, 5 years ago at a book signing. She and I were both big fans of an author who was on a book tour and doing readings at small local libraries. We were both there alone and sat together by chance. We started talking about the books and we just hit it off right away. I asked her out for coffee and from there our relationship blossomed. We were only together for a year and a half when I proposed. We've been married for about 3.5 years. I was actually married before I met my wife. It was quite unfortunate, but I married my high school sweetheart, and she ended up cheating on me with the worker, so we had a very bitter divorce. From the start of our relationship, I was very upfront with my wife about that. It was something I was insecure about. I still had some wounds from being cheated on, and I wanted to make sure she wasn't going to make them worse. She assured me that when she had her eyes on someone, they were the only person she thought of. It felt good to hear that, and I was very confident in our relationship. My wife was very close with her family. When we originally met, we were only living about 45 minutes away from them, but about a year into our marriage, I got offered an incredible promotion at another branch of my company. It was too good to pass up, so she agreed to move all the way across the country with me. It was tough because she was away from her family, but we made it work. Every year her family would all go to a lake house they owned and have a family vacation together. Because of the move and the pandemic, my wife hadn't gone for a few years and she missed it. Last summer, she told me that she really wanted us to go because she missed her family. Unfortunately, it didn't line up with my schedule to go, but I didn't want to keep her from going, so she went alone. I had met her family a few times in person, but most of the interactions I had with them were online. In particular, I was good friends with some of her cousins. They were into a lot of the same things as me, and we even had a group chat together where we exchanged memes and played some games online. I didn't hear much from my wife while she was away aside from the nightly message telling me good night. I was fine with it. I knew she was a family, so I wasn't really too worried about anything. Toward the end of the week, one of her cousins called me. It wasn't unusual for that to happen, but it was a little weird because I knew that they were with family. I answered half expecting there to be a bunch of people on the other end just calling to say hi, but I was wrong. He was practically whispering on the phone, clearly trying to keep the conversation a secret. He told me that he values my friendship, and he didn't want anything to jeopardize that. Plus, with everything I told him about my past relationship, he felt like I deserved to know what was happening. My heart was pounding out of my chest as he told me this. Apparently, my wife had been meeting up with a guy that she used to date. He was her summer fling every time they would visit the lake house. Her cousin wasn't able to tell me if they had been sleeping together. He didn't know, but he was a little bit alarmed by how much time they were spending together. It would have been one thing if she'd mentioned that he was someone she would be seeing while she was there. Maybe grabbing coffee with him wouldn't have been the end of the world, but to see him several times while she was away, and not telling me, felt like a betrayal. I had been through all of that before, and I was starting to get really worried. The last thing I wanted was to find out that my wife was cheating on me when my ex-wife had done the exact same thing. I asked her cousin for the guy's name and he told me. Right away, I went onto all of my wife's social media pages and searched for him. I found him on her Facebook and I saw that they have been interacting a little bit on her page. I didn't want to do it, but I had every reason to believe that something was going on. I knew her password, so I logged into Facebook and looked through their messages. When I looked through them, I saw that they had been messaging each other fairly regularly. A majority of the messages were friendly, sharing jokes with each other and just chatting about life. About a week before my wife was set to leave for her trip, she messaged him and told him she would be in town. He was very excited about it, and he even said, "How long has it been?" 3 years. My wife replied confirming that. I was shocked to hear that. I had never even heard of a guy before, but he saw my wife 3 years ago. From what I could glean from the messages, he got married 3 years ago, and they were together one last time before his marriage. It was also clear from the recent messages that they had planned on being together during the week my wife was away. He had also apparently moved away from town, so he lied and told his wife that he was going on a work trip. I felt absolutely gutted by the information. This was the second time I was going to get divorced because my wife had cheated on me. Maybe it was the anger because it was happening again, or maybe it was just me not wanting to take this lying down, but I wanted to get some revenge on them. The only issue was that I was all the way across the country. After I did some digging, I found out that his wife actually only lived a couple of towns over. It wouldn't have been impossible for her to go and catch them in the act. I thought about what I wanted to do carefully, but I ended up sending her a message through Instagram and explaining everything to her. She was very easy to convince because she had already suspected something was up. I told her that she needed to go and catch them and get some evidence against them. She agreed, and I gave her the information for the hotel that I knew they were meeting up at. I waited by my phone all day for her to send me the pictures or videos that she took of them together. She called me a few hours after she was supposed to be there and told me what she saw. When she knocked on the door, her husband thought that it was room service that he had ordered. She could clearly see that he was in the room with another woman, so she stormed in and found my wife in bed. She wasn't able to get any pictures, but my wife left shortly after, and she didn't know what happened. However, she asked him why he was with my wife. He told her that there was nothing emotional between them at all. They had a history, but the history was entirely sexual. He even admitted to her that all his life, over anyone else he's been with including her, that my wife was the best sex he ever had. When they were near each other, they liked to meet up just for sex and nothing else. That news really hurt to hear, but it was enough proof for me to leave. My wife and I were living in an apartment at the time, so I packed my things while she was still away and I disappeared. I didn't tell her where I was going. I didn't tell her why I was leaving. When she got back from her vacation, I didn't pick her up at the airport like I was supposed to. She had been calling me and texting me asking me where I was, so I just blocked her number. I ghosted her completely. When she got home, she found a long note that I left alongside the divorce papers. I told her that I didn't want anything to do with her. Thankfully, we signed a prenup, so there was no chance that we were going to have a lengthy divorce battle. The last time I ever saw her was when we were signing the official papers. Now I'm struggling to find another person who I feel like I can put my trust in. It's extremely difficult when two people you have given yourself to have betrayed you like that. OP. I'm really sorry you had to go through something like that. It's awful knowing that your wife knew about your history with infidelity and didn't consider that when she met with her affair partner. She knew that if you found out it would hurt you more than it did the last time. Yet she still did it anyway. It's really great that her cousin was willing to tip you off when they thought something fishy was going on. Many family members would automatically side with the person in the wrong even though they wouldn't want to. It's awesome that they value your friendship enough to let you know. And I hope you still have them in your life. They seem like a solid person to have around. It's just such a shame that two people would throw away their marriages with people that they love because of sex alone. If there is something someone is unhappy with in the bedroom, you can always talk about it and open up a dialogue to improve anything. Nobody has to have an affair to have good sex. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts.